this computer. All right, well, that was eventful. 10:08, and maybe we're almost ready to start class. Okay, let me just see what I have here for us. Let me share my screen. Are we sharing? I am sharing. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so here's the plan. My plan is to begin lipids, so please open poll everywhere, however you're doing poll questions, whether it's on your phone or on your laptop or your desktop. We'll have poll questions. I'll answer some Padlet questions. We'll have discussion groups. I think we're starting to get a routine going. It only took 6-8 weeks. And then I'll talk to you about the exam. Then Wednesday, we're having class. We'll begin energy balance. And then at the end of the class, I'll stick around for whenever class is over, I'll stick around to answer your questions about the exam. And what I'll do is I'll send the questions to you by 2. And then I ask that you have, and I'll post them under assignments, I guess, so that they can be submitted through Turnitin. And then you have till noon on Saturday to get them back to me. So hopefully that will cover any connectivity issues. Well, you let me know. I mean, I'll be checking in on my email if you have questions. So, and also, well, I'll say this again, but keep in mind, exams are 10% of your grade. So I don't want you to stress about the exams. I've never just given a midterm and a final. I've never just given 2 exams. So I know there's a lot of information, but there are other things that you're doing this semester that are worth the same, if not more, that you can put your energy into. Okay. All right. So. Well, not today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this is from last week. Type 2 diabetics require exogenous insulin, true or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, actually, the answer to that is false, and I will correct it. We're cooking with gas this morning, folks. Oops. So it's the type 1 diabetic that requires exogenous insulin because their body isn't making any insulin, so they have to get it from outside the body. And they can get it through shots. Some people take shots, other people have insulin pumps. There are different technologies that are being developed. An artificial pancreas might be down the road where you can actually get transplanted cells, the islet cells of the pancreas, so that the body can start making its own insulin. Has anybody ever had Professor Blodgett for an instructor?
We both have.
Okay, and has he talked to you, I imagine, has he talked to you about diabetes, his diabetes?
No, I didn't know he had diabetes.
You do now. Well, I remember him telling me, and there was a clinical trial on beta islet cell transplants, and he wasn't able to get to it, but what was happening was that cells from a pancreas that had been working could be transplanted into a type 1 diabetic, and it did seem to work, but it worked for a while, and then it stopped working. And I just couldn't imagine what was worse, having it work for a while and then stop working, so that you knew what it was like to not need exogenous insulin, or to have never known what it was like to not have to take insulin. But these are some of the things that are being worked on. Hello. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. True or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, that answer is true. Can someone explain to me what an autoimmune disease is? I don't have the raise hand function. I don't know that the raise hand function works when I'm sharing my screen. So if you want to send a message, or
An autoimmune disease is something that's in your system, and it's something that you're born with. So, and then it can show up throughout your life at kind of like any stage.
Okay, do you know what autoimmune means?
Well, it's basically, I mean, it's kind of like what I think Jackie just said in the chat, like the body just starts attacking itself, like the cells can't. Yeah.
Okay, what I did today was I have 2 screens here. So I'll talk to you about that, but yeah, okay. Right, so what happens with an autoimmune disease is we're working with the immune system. And for some reason, well, part of what your immune system does is differentiate between what I call self and non-self. If it recognizes something as self, it leaves it alone. If it sees it as non-self, it's going to trigger an immune response. That's how the immune system works. When it's an autoimmune response, for some reason, the body is recognizing things that are self as non-self. I call it defective recognition of self. And for some reason, the immune system looks at the cells in the pancreas as non-self and stimulates an immune response. And in type 1 diabetes, it destroys the pancreatic cells that make insulin. And then the person cannot make their own insulin, and that's why they need to have an exogenous or outside the body source. Can anybody remember what condition we've talked about that affects diet and lifestyle that is also an autoimmune condition?
Celiac.
That's right. Celiac disease is an autoimmune. And what's happening with celiac disease?
The body attacks the gluten. Wait, no, your body attacks the cells in your small intestines.
For some reason, that gluten, which doesn't harm most of the people in the world, when it hits your pancreas, when it hits your intestinal cells, it triggers an immune response. And that immune response in this case is inflammation. Okay, so yeah, that's also an autoimmune disease. This was in the video, what's going on with the body with type 1 diabetes. For some reason, antibodies are attacking insulin producing cells of the pancreas, so no insulin gets made. And when no insulin is made, the glucose that's in your blood after it's been digested and broken down, absorbed through the intestinal cell, through the bloodstream and gets to the cell, now it cannot get into the cell, and so it builds up in the bloodstream. And that's type 1 diabetes, when there's no insulin being made. HDLs are also known as the bad cholesterol. True or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So this is a picture that somebody made for me years ago. HDLs are I tell people, remember when we talk about HDLs and LDLs, that H is healthy and L is lousy. And years ago when I lived in central Pennsylvania, I taught a class online, and I had it was being projected throughout central Pennsylvania, just not only to students. It was a nutrition class. And I wanted to have a picture that showed how HDLs are good and LDLs are bad. And I was told by my producer that as long as they changed 50%, or no, 15%, I don't know if this is still true, of a copyrighted picture, it was considered new. So this was the picture that they made for me. These were my HDLs and my LDLs. What HDLs are supposed to be, you're supposed to recognize with the HDLs is that they are taking cholesterol. That's what the gunk is, the stalactites and stalagmites. They're taking cholesterol off the blood vessel wall. And then what happens is that cholesterol then goes back to the liver. And what the LDLs are supposed to be doing is putting cholesterol on the blood vessel wall. So H is healthy and L is lousy. Or if you know anything about your blood cholesterol numbers, H's you want higher and L's you want lower. And when I talked about this in the video, HDLs and LDLs are blood lipids. We do not consume HDLs or LDLs, all right? These are the lipoproteins that are transported in our body. And the first ones that leave the intestinal tract are the chylomicrons, and those most resemble or are affected, by your diet. And they're highest in triglyceride. And then as they travel through the bloodstream, the proportion of the fats change. It's maybe related to diet, to exercise, to genetics. And these, we'll come back to that. And these are the 4 lipoproteins that we talked about. They're all made up of the same 4 molecules: protein, cholesterol, phospholipid, and triglyceride. But the amounts of those change, and they change, at least these last 2, HDLs and LDLs, in relation to lifestyle and genetics. Questions about HDLs and LDLs? Okay. Trans fatty acids may be found in animal products. True or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So trans fatty acids can be found in animal products. We mostly, well, I don't know what you think about trans fatty acids, but when I've learned about them and talked about them, they are created during the hydrogenation process. And the trans fatty acids are made from partially hydrogenated fatty acids. But they are also found up to 20% of what we consume, or for folks who consume animal products, they do come from 20% of trans fatty acids can come from animal products. That's why it's recommended, one of the recommendations for limiting animal products is that they may provide a natural source of these fats, because as the animals digest food, the bacteria in their gut may produce the trans fatty acids. But in that, most of the trans fatty acids in people's diet, in people's bodies, come from diet. Cutting back on dietary trans fats is the primary recommendation. Now, there was a regulation that went into effect that was supposed to take trans fatty acids out of processing food. I don't know what it's been replaced with, and I don't know how strong that's being followed right now. But you can look at food labels, and if you see anything that says made from partially hydrogenated fatty acids, there may be some trans fats in that food. If it contains less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving, though, it can be labeled as trans-free. Any questions about trans fatty acids? Dietitians recommend the DASH diet primarily for lowering blood cholesterol levels. True or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. The DASH diet stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension. So this diet would be recommended. Yes, it can help lower blood cholesterol levels, but it was primarily designed to work with blood pressure. What's the one, what have you heard that folks are supposed to eliminate or limit when they're diagnosed with high blood pressure?
Salt.
Salt or sodium, right? Because everybody always thought salt or sodium is what raises blood pressure. Salt holds on to water, that it can cause edema, it can cause you to retain fluids, and retaining fluids can raise blood pressure. So a study was designed, this study, to see if that was true. It didn't tell people to eliminate sodium, but the recommendations for this diet were to consume between 9 and 14 servings of vegetables and fruits every day, which is a lot. And what this diet showed was that for a lot of people, following this diet could help lower blood pressure as much as medication in mild cases. Please don't tell anybody you know that's on blood pressure medications to eat differently and go off their meds. This is something that should be done under supervision with a registered dietitian. First of all, yes, I'm not giving medical advice, so please. But the thing is that this diet showed that it wasn't so much the sodium in the diet that was raising blood pressure, but it may have been the lack of the minerals that are found in these vegetables and fruits, the calcium, the potassium, the magnesium, that these nutrients are just as important in maintaining blood pressure as sodium may be related to raising blood pressure. And the reality is that only about 50%, is it 50? A small percent of the population, so maybe that's 25% of the population, is what we call salt sensitive, meaning that if they have high blood pressure, cutting back on the sodium in their diet will help reduce their blood pressure. This recommendation, everybody should cut back on salt, is pretty much made on a, it can't hurt recommendation. But what kind of foods are high in sodium? Yeah, Alejandra.
I have seen that many, for example, canned soups, many processed food.
Okay. What else is high in sodium?
Cured meat.
Charred meats.
I know Diet Coke.
Is it? Is Diet Coke high in sodium?
Yeah.
Self-disclosure, I can't drink bubbles, so I don't know anything about sodium. They burn my tongue. It's a thing. Well, most of the sodium in our diet comes from ultra-processed packaged food. Salt is a preservative, so it helps preserve food. It helps improve shelf life. And we apparently develop a taste for sodium. I apparently am enjoying salty peanut butter a little more than I used to. I'm not really excited about that. However, it's when you are eating lots of vegetables and fruits, you really don't have a lot of room for these ultra-processed foods. You may be filling up on all these other foods. You may be changing your lifestyle. If you're following the DASH diet, you're supposedly increasing your exercise, you're working on maintaining a healthy body weight. But in terms of the effects that the diet itself is having, it's increasing the calcium, the potassium, and the magnesium, thereby lowering the amount of sodium in your diet. Again, please certainly share this with people that you know, that the DASH diet can help lower blood pressure, especially mild blood pressure, people who have mild hypertension. But don't tell them to do it unless they're under supervision. In that, when I say don't do it, don't give up your medication. Absolutely start eating more vegetables and fruits. I would never tell anybody not to do that unless they have health issues. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing and, oh no, let me just go over this with you first. Okay, so we had some, oh, wait, do I not have current events today? Okay, I don't think we have current events today because we were gonna have an exam today. Yeah, okay, so let me go over these questions. Scarlett, you had a number of questions. Can you tell me more about this Formula One? Because honestly, I don't know anything about it.
That's just all one question. I was just like telling you what I knew about it.
Okay.
Because like normally I just take regular protein powder like after a workout. But a couple like workout accounts that I follow for people that are personal trainers, they like both of them were talking about taking a protein isolate, which it's just like faster digesting. And it's more effective post-workout. And they were talking about taking that combined with like a fast digesting carb source. I don't really know like what it is, but it seems like it was scientifically backed up, but I don't know like if it is accurate or not.
Okay. So I'm glad you asked that. So first of all, let me ask, are they selling this at your gym or wherever you're working out?
No, they just like, they were talking about what they use, but they weren't selling it.
So what else, so what do you want to ask them before you start taking it?
I'm not too sure. I don't know.
Okay,
I guess.
well, that's why you're asking me.
Yeah.
You want to know where they got the information on that besides the people that sell it. You want to see the studies, you want to see the placebo-controlled studies that showed that outside a laboratory, outside of a petri dish, that this has been shown to be the most efficient. All right? Before you start spending money on something like this, because none of the dietitians I know would recommend something like this. anything that says it's the best or whatever, that's a red flag. There's no way they know it's the best unless they have tested it against everything that's out there. All right. So before, and I'm not saying that the folks that are telling you to use this, well, I guess I am saying that they have a vested interest. All right, I lied. But what I'm saying is, how do they know? And what are their qualifications for making those recommendations? And you're just asking as a consumer who wants to make a good decision before spending money because these things aren't safe. So they can sound scientifically accurate. It's not hard to sound scientifically accurate. They're using all these big words. They're saying protein isolate, fast digesting, void of carbs and fats. Okay, so yeah, I don't know what that means. And when you ask them, or if you feel comfortable asking them, use me as the reason for asking them. Say, I asked my professor about this and she would like to know, because if this is true, it changes everything. And I would like to know, okay? So use me, please. And then, I mean, I will look up the resources and I'll check it if they can give you any articles or anything. I'll bet you nickel they don't have it, but if they do, well, my other nickel is bet on that the company that sells it are the ones that are doing the studies. So that would be my guess, but yeah, okay? So in other words, I don't know. It's the answer. Jordan, is it true that when women are pregnant, their bodies change? Well, yes, their bodies change. Oh yeah. And yes, all those things do happen. Why? Because there's things happening inside their body. There's hormonal changes. And those seem, for some people, they heighten the sense of smell and the sense of taste. For other people, they blunt them. I'm just my N of one that can tell you what happened to me. But it's hormonal, unless it's that little parasite inside that's expressing its own individuality. But yeah, and it has to do with all the different changes that are going on in the body. And just because you crave it doesn't mean you have to eat it. Now, unfortunately, there are some women in certain parts of the world that wind up craving things like dirt or chalk. Okay, this is called pica, and that's not good, because what happens is when they eat those things, it inhibits absorption of other nutrients. And these are usually women who don't have health care and aren't under medical supervision, and that's why they develop health issues. But if you have health care and you are able to see an obstetrician, they should be asking you these questions, okay? Marissa, have I heard of elderflower pills? And what are my thoughts on them and helping immune systems? I've had elderflower tea or a drink, which was awesome, but I have heard about it and immune response, but I don't know. What have you heard?
I don't know. My mom started buying them like when we went into quarantine, and she was like, you need to take these every day for your immune system. And I was like, okay. So we started buying them here and we've been taking them, but I don't know. I just did it because my mom said to.
Okay, so I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get in between you and your mother.
No, you can. It's okay.
Okay, that's another conversation. I don't have any information on that. I also have heard that vitamin D is supposed to boost your immune system, and there's no indication that it's improving. And those kinds of things are made on observations of people who've been sick and people who aren't sick, and they look at their vitamin C status or vitamin D status. I would rather see you drinking, elderflower tea or something, because then at least you're drinking fluids and being hydrated. Not that that has anything to do with your immune system, but just because that's a good health behavior to stay hydrated with something that tastes good, if it tastes good. But I don't see any benefit to it, but I would be curious if you are comfortable, based on our limited conversation about your relationship, asking her where she got her information. And again, like I told Scarlett, use me. Tell her you were asking. Don't tell her what I said, but tell her I would like to know what she knows. And because if it's good, then I would like to know about it.
Okay.
Okay. And Justin, are you here today? Because he wanted to know if it's true that multivitamins are bad for you. They're not bad in that, I don't know what bad means, but they're not necessary. So that would be my answer to that. Okay. So we didn't have any current events today because the schedules got screwed up with our day off last week. So I did post, for those of you that would like to get involved, there were a lot of comments in your journals about diabetes. And if you want to continue the conversation, there is something on, I did put up a Flipgrid, and I also posted another Ask Me Anything. Okay. So if you want to do that, I have a couple up, one, so we can use those. Okay. And then I did look at there was an engagement survey that was sent out, and thank those of you that did respond to it. And the things that some of you felt that weren't working, you're concerned about your participation grade. And I did send out what it would be right now. And I need to tell you that the highest grade that anybody got was 140 points. Nobody got 160. And I looked at what responses were to the engagement tools, to the journal responses, and that is a weekly assignment that you are supposed to send in with feedback. So this isn't a final grade by any means, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm happy to talk to you if you want to come see me and ask me questions about what it means. So let's see. Yeah, it is hard to see. Canvas is a bit disorganized. I'm trying. I appreciated that. Some people are always talking. It's hard to participate. I can't see a hand being raised when I'm sharing my screen. So I don't know what to do about that, except what I'm doing now. And I'm looking back and forth because I have my laptop here and I have my desktop and I'm logged in as a participant. Unfortunately, when I share my screen with you, I'm sharing my screen with me on my laptop. So I'm trying to make a point of looking at the chat if you want to put questions in there. I have been told, I did talk to somebody about Zoom and ask them about the hand raising feature because it doesn't have any sound attached to it. So he said now that everybody in the world is using Zoom, that may be a feature that they're trying to add. Sometimes I get confused when assignments are due because Canvas can be unclear at time. I would say that's true. But what I do try to do at the end, on the slides at the beginning of class, and maybe at the end, is tell you what's coming up. And I try to do that in the roundup when I send out. So it was suggested that I send out something at the beginning of each week telling you what was due. I can't do that. I'm trying to stay up with what I have. I appreciate the suggestion, but that's one thing I can't do. I can't add right now, but I am trying some of these other things. So thank you for those of you that responded, was what I wanted to say. All right, so what I want to do now is break you into, actually before I do this, or maybe I'll wait till we get back, I was just curious about what folks knew about HDLs and LDLs, but maybe what I'll do is wait till we get back. So what I'm gonna do is break you into the groups. The questions were sent out. Let me get out of sharing screen. And I'll pause. Okay, so let me share. Since we're done with poll questions. All right, so this is what's happening during inflammation, is that you have your healthy artery and then there's an injury to the blood vessel, and that injury leads to inflammation. And part of that inflammatory response involves fats breaking into or accumulating inside the blood vessel wall. Actually, let me wait till the next group answers, and then we'll finish that question. So who has the second question?
I can go. My group too had it. So basically the question was, describe the relationship between plaque, hypertension, arterial damage, and heart disease. So hypertension is the result of plaque buildup in blood vessels, therefore limiting blood flow. And the plaque buildup narrows these vessels and causes the blood to exert more pressure against the walls. Going off of that, heart disease results from limited blood flow to the heart, damage / death of part of the heart muscle. And then excess strain and damage from high blood pressure causes coronary arteries serving the heart to narrow. And so putting all these together over time, people with high blood pressure are more likely to develop coronary artery disease due to the fact that this high blood pressure is putting the additional strain on artery walls. And this additional strain eventually damages the arteries and can make them more susceptible to plaque buildup. And it goes hand in hand with atherosclerosis. And atherosclerosis is the buildup of fats, cholesterol, and other substances in your artery walls, restricting blood flow.
Okay, that's very complete. Thank you. So let me just show you these slides that kind of reviews that, so that when you're looking at it or when you review this. So I showed this and this is a Khan Academy video. I highly recommend them. I think I have it in, resources, but what's happening is you see this would be an occluded blood vessel, but blood is still able to flow through it. And then there's some kind of injury, whether it's plaque or whatever, hypertension, because what happens with hypertension is that the blood is flowing at a higher rate, and that can cause an injury. And what happens is your immune system responds to that injury. And what's going on here is that the response is, if, for example, you cut yourself on your hand or on your foot, then you would have a scab start to form. Well, that's kind of what this picture is supposed to mean, is that these blood cells, these platelets, are coming to cover up that injury. And in some cases, if the injury is not taken care of, all right, if whatever's causing the injury, whether it's hypertension or, well, let's just go with hypertension, then the platelets or the plaque is continuing to build up until at some point you obstruct blood flow. And if that's blood flowing to the brain, the person has a stroke, what's called an ischemic stroke. If that's blood flowing to the heart, that person will have a heart attack. Oops, this wasn't what I wanted to, let me just see if I can find the other thing. And yeah, this was with your question, Julia. So we have this triad, this triangle of insult to injury. Which came first? Who knows? But let's say we start with high blood pressure. That's what hypertension is. And what that does is that's damaging the arterial wall. For whatever reason, it's causing a little cut, whatever the damage is. And that's leading to this inflammatory response that results in the buildup of plaque. And unless you break this cycle, blood pressure is going to keep going up, arterial damage is going to continue, plaque, and until that plaque occludes or cuts off blood flow. And that's when you will see, that's the hypothesis of what leads to heart attack or stroke. Any questions about those two situations? All right, group 3. What do you have for us?
So the first part of our question is answering what a hydrogenated fat is. And then these are created when hydrogen atoms hydrogen is added to double bonds, and it creates single bonds, which is also a saturated fat. And then the hydrogen atoms are on the same side in the fatty acid carbon chain.
Okay, so let me just show.
For the partially hydrogenated fat, we said the chemistry of the double bonds change. So the hydrogen atoms are on the opposite side of the double bond carbon chain. So that was our main difference. Whereas like for the hydrogenated, they're on the same side, and for partially hydrogenated, they're on opposite sides.
Right. All right, and let me just show that. Let's see. Am I still sharing or am I done sharing? Oh, I want to share. So I wasn't sharing the other one, was I? You guys have to tell me. Did I share this with you? This was the slide that showed the endless cycle of plaque, hypertension, and arterial damage. And until that cycle's broken, it's going to keep happening. And that can lead to a heart attack or stroke. In terms of, yes, cis and trans fatty acids, like you said, it has to do with the chemistry. When a fat is totally hydrogenated, there are no double bonds. But when it's partially hydrogenated, then what happens is it changes the chemistry of the double bond, of the hydrogens on the double bond, from one configuration to the other. and it's the trans configuration that has been shown to increase heart attack risk as much as saturated fat. So it's about chemistry, folks. Okay, the next group, what do you have? The DASH diet.
Oh, we have one more part to the
you have
question.
more, okay, carry on.
So the question was, how does hydrogenation of fat affect heart disease risk? And yeah, so hydrogenation of fat results in trans fatty acids, and that is what we believe affects heart disease risk, in that it increases LDLs, decreases HDLs, and increases triglycerides. And trans fatty acids can also contribute to inflammation, arterial wall dysfunction, and diabetes.
Right. And yet when I was first practicing dietetics, when I was first a registered dietitian in an outpatient setting, we were telling people, it was when we were telling people to not eat butter and to eat margarine, because that was what we thought was going to raise cholesterol levels, because we didn't know about trans fatty acids. There were no significant amounts of trans fatty acids in the diet, but once there started to be, then the data came in and we saw, well, not me, and then it was found that trans fatty acids can be just as detrimental as saturated fats. Yeah, so good job. Okay, DASH diet.
So we talked about how the DASH diet is an approach to reducing or stopping high blood pressure. And the way that this is done is by decreasing the sodium in your diet, but also increasing nutrient-rich foods that have nutrients such as magnesium, potassium, and calcium. And also like the diet has a component of exercise. So it's like generally a healthy lifestyle. And because of this, it can also prevent osteoporosis, cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes.
Okay, we don't say prevent, reduces risk.
Reduce risk, sorry.
That's okay. I've been doing it for years, so that's fine. Okay. Yeah, again, it's been done in a clinical setting and it's been recommended, but not unless you're under supervision. Okay, certainly add vegetables and fruits, but if you or someone you know is taking medication, do not go off the medication unless you are following doctor's orders. Okay. I know people like to think food can take care of everything, but it can't, and you have to do things correctly. Be careful. All right. And last but not least, talk about dietary fat and cholesterol. And you can throw in high blood pressure if you want, because that seemed to be something you knew a lot about.
I think you skipped group 5.
Except for group 5 should go first.
So ours was about dietary fat and cancer risk, and so there's no evidence linking dietary fat and cancer. All the studies that have been done are inconclusive, but what does affect cancer risk is like the most common risk factors include aging, tobacco, sun exposure, radiation, chemicals and other substances, some viruses and bacteria, certain hormones, family history, alcohol, poor diet, and being overweight.
Oh my God. So this I put in because the chapter in the book talked about lipids, heart disease, and cancer, and I still can't talk about lipids and cancer because I have not seen enough. So that's why I asked you to find out what you could find. And I don't know what you look for besides what I gave you, but yeah. Cancer there's no easy fix. Smoking certainly decreases. It doesn't eliminate risk. We talk about risk reduction. Lifestyle and diet can have a role, absolutely. I think I've been told that I remember reading Cocktail Chatter that the causes of death or illness are germs, genes, wear and tear, and stuff happens. So you do what you can about controllable risk factors, and that's what we have to learn to modify, are the controllable risk factors. So, because you can't pick your parents. All right, now is it time to go to group 6? I'm gonna roll this morning, folks. Okay, group 6.
So the relationship we found between dietary fat and dietary cholesterol and risk for heart disease was that dietary cholesterol has no effect on blood cholesterol levels in most people. And more importantly, there's no significant link between the cholesterol you eat and your risk for heart disease. So eating foods in trans fats and the amount of harmful LDL cholesterol in the bloodstream reduces the amount of beneficial HDL cholesterol. So essentially, if we were dietitians giving advice, we'd be telling people to watch the saturated fats that they're consuming and perhaps trying to add in soluble fibers to absorb the cholesterol in the bile of your stomach, which doesn't work for everybody, but it's just one of the suggestions.
Wow, great advice. You guys know where to go for information. Yeah, and like just like HDL, some people exercise raises HDLs, other people not so much. So that's where genes, your genetics gets involved. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't exercise just because it doesn't increase your HDLs, right? I ask people to try to separate why they are active from specific endpoints, whether it's weight loss or reduced or increased HDLs, whatever it is that you're looking for. I ask you to find a way to like being active that doesn't have something that could disappoint you. So, all right, any questions about what we went over? There's a lot of information. Let me just ask, has anybody ever had their cholesterol measured? No? Okay, well, we'll talk about this another time because I want to talk. Let me just share my screen one more time just to show you this really cute picture. About the exam. I didn't take that picture, but I was there when it was taken. Okay, I've done that. I was in Antarctica once. How many times have I told you? Okay, so we're having an exam coming up. It's going to be on the information through.
Professor, we can't see the screen.
I know, I stopped sharing.
Oh, sorry.
I was just showing you a picture of a penguin. Do you want to see it again? I'm happy to share it. You should all start sharing pictures of places that you've been to or would like to go to as well. We deserve that. So the exam is going to cover information through module 3.4, carbohydrate and storage disorders. Right now, what I'm putting together are 10 to 12 short answer questions. All right, I can't see giving multiple choice or true false. I'm not interested in locking your screen or locking you into a specific time because things happen. So that's my current thought. What are you guys? What are your concerns? And we'll talk more about this on Wednesday, and I'll stick around when we're done for whatever questions you have, but certainly whatever questions you have right now, I'm happy to answer. What can I talk to you about with respect to the exam?
Is the exam during class time, or you're going to give it to us during class and then we have time to get it back?
I'm going to mail it out, mail it. I'm going to email it to you by 2. It's going to be posted. I think because I want it to come back through Turnitin, I think I have to send it out through assignments. I think I have an exam section through assignments. So you can answer it online. You can, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think there's anything you need to write, but you need to answer it however you feel. If it's something that you need to write out and take a snapshot of and send back to me, I don't know what that means. I've had people do that, but what kind of exams are your other professors giving? Or what formats are they using? Anyone? Bueller?
This will be the first exam that I've taken all semester. A lot of mine are project based. So I don't really have a lot to go off of.
Same here. Haven't had an exam yet.
Oh, I'll be your first. What about last semester in the spring? Those of you that had exams did any of you have exams in the spring?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were they like? How were they given?
It was mainly like a few, well, I had a few projects, but I think I took one exam and it was just a few questions and we had probably a week to just hand them back in.
Okay.
Like, it was short answer. And then everything else was like either a paper or a presentation.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why, you know, you'll have from Wednesday afternoon till Saturday at noon. If somebody's electricity is down for 3 days, let me know. I mean, it's 2020. Why shouldn't that happen?
So is it going to be like a Word document? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I imagine if you're, yeah.
Can we just type underneath and then send it back?
Yeah.
Via Turnitin?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope. I don't know. I'll find out if I'm doing it wrong. I've never done it through this before. You guys are guinea pigs. You get bonus points for being guinea pigs, but what are you worried about?
I think just the fact that it's just a lot of information and it's a lot of overlapping information.
Yeah.
What does that mean, overlapping?
I mean that it all comes together. It's just, it's a lot.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And you have a lot of time to do it, but I know you have other things that you're doing. I don't know what to say about that except time management. You know, and also to remind you, it's 10% of your grade. And that's one of the reasons why we have all these other things that you're doing, because I don't want you to be that stressed about the exam, because there's so much information and I don't know what to say. I will share with you that something I'm considering, and is that if you are happy with your grade going into the final is 10% of your grade, then you don't have to take it. It works for me because then I have less papers to grade. So, you know, I want you to just do the best you can. Everybody gets COVID points. What can I say?
Is the final going to be the same format as the midterm, or is it at a specific time with like registrar?
I think we have a specific time, but I mean, yes, there's a specific time, but I'm not going to follow it. I mean, I'll send it out during that time, but I'll give you more time to send it back. What else are you worried about? Kevin, what are you worried about? Kevin's not worried at all.
No, just the same like as everyone. Like there's a lot of content to cover, so there's a lot of videos to rewatch.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I would suggest is look at the questions, answer the ones you know, and then kind of make notes about what you don't know. And I'm not going to ask you everything. I can't. I can't possibly. So there will be things that you'll know a lot about, which is why you need to study, that I'm not going to ask you on. So be prepared to be disappointed now, and then you won't be surprised. But there will be questions that I am interested in and that I want to ask you about. So, you know, I wouldn't start, I mean, if you want to rewatch your videos because they're wonderful and the sound of my voice makes you motivated to improve your lives, then by all means. I don't want you to have to spend 3 days looking at videos, but it's a thing. Yeah. Katie, what are you worried about?
How long do you think it's going to be, like, if I sat down and did it?
The problem with me answering that is that I know all the answers to the questions, so it wouldn't take me that long. I'm bragging, but it's taken me.
Average student, do you have any idea?
No, because the fact of the matter is you can start it, you can take a break, you can start it, you'll come back, you can take a break. I'm not telling you once you start it, you have to finish it.
True.
Yeah.
In terms of responses, how long are you expecting? Like how many paragraphs? Because you said short answers.
I don't know. I will tell you that I don't ask essay questions because I don't want what's called a mind dump. I had a professor in graduate school draw a toilet bowl on my paper because basically what I had done was write everything I knew about the topic and wanted him to pick out the correct stuff. Don't do that. I don't know how to draw toilets, but I will take off points if you wind up writing everything and your answer is buried somewhere in the 15th paragraph. You should be able to answer it in 3 paragraphs. There will be some math. You will have to do some calculations for 1 or 2 questions. You should know how to do it. It's not difficult math. We've already done sample questions. It will have to do with the knowledge of the amount of calories or grams of, or calories per gram, and you know where to find that information. The thing about studying is to help you know where to go. When it's an open book test, you should be able to know where to go. So it's not like you have to memorize everything. You just have to organize your thoughts. And that's what I think. And I may be wrong because I haven't taken this kind of exam, but it's to be able to organize your thoughts so that you can look at the question. There will be questions, like you said, Marissa, that combine things because there is overlap, which is why I like this book, because it pulls things together. But if you can help yourself by knowing where to find things and to synthesize the answers, then hopefully that will make this a learning experience rather than just a regurgitation experience. But I can't speak to that for you. Everybody's exam experience is different. Okay. All right, let me unrecord so that this information